Okay, well, good afternoon. We are kicking off the capital improvement plan public hearing process for the capital improvement plan. City Planning Commission is required to assist in the development of the capital budget and the quarterly capital plan. And this is Monday, May 18th. We are starting with our 1 o'clock group, and we'll do a round of introductions and then we'll kick it off with you. So my name is Laura Bryan. I'm from City Planning Commission.
I'm Haley Webb, I'm also with the City Planning Commission. I'm Cameron Glossier, also City Planning.
Larry Massey, City Planning.
Whitney Cavallaro, Property Management.
Trey Nobles, Director of Property Management.
Sean Pine, Project Manager, Capital Project.
Jerry Harris, Director of Capital Projects.
Cheyenne Levis, Capital Projects.
Courtney Sepper-Schwang, Economic Development.
Jenny Maines, Economic Development.
Trey, you wanna kick us off with property management?
Sure.
Thanks.
The first request on the list is for citywide repairs, or citywide building repairs and upgrades. Over the 5 years, we've requested 24.25 million. This is money that is used to repair roofs, to fix building structures, upgrade windows, and in general, if something goes wrong in one of our facilities that have a history of being poorly maintained over the decades, this is the fund to tap into, as general fund dollars are not necessarily budgeted at all for citywide building repairs or improvements. Then the next item on the list is citywide life safety upgrades. It's 9.9 million. This is money that really goes into fire suppression systems, into elevators and the like. We currently have had repeated issues with some of our fire safety systems, and this would allow us to begin truly upgrading them and bringing them into the modern usage. Several of the fire panel systems that we use across our buildings have a new generation out, and the current generation that they are is slowly being discontinued, i.e. the parts necessary to keep them going are no longer becoming available. This money would allow us to begin targeting a building, redoing one, harvesting out the components that work to make sure the other systems can stay up, but slowly replacing each year in a defined process that would allow us to upgrade them all without interruption. The third item on the list, request for 800,000 is citywide efficiency upgrades. This is money that would be used to modernize lighting and other energy efficiency upgrades that could be done throughout the city to help reduce the annual cost on the electric bill as well as support the environment. The next request is for VA facility improvements, $14 million over 5 years. As everyone is well aware, the VA complex was given to us in a state of disrepair and has only continued to get worse. We keep trying to make portions of it function and have only been semi-successful with it. This would be money to help stabilize the operational spaces and possibly expand, or money that could be used if another option, whether it be a rental or something else, for us to be able to prep the building and for the next use in order to make sure that could occur. The next line item is citywide HVAC improvements, 14.9 million. This is money that would be designed to replace our aged and dated systems off of the last capital budget request that we received money for this category. We bought we changed out the units. We bought 12 units overall, but at 6 facilities, and our current out the paperwork to have those installed, which will replace some rented temporary units where the units completely collapse, and to replace out some of the ones that are on their last leg. So this would be funding where we could both look to expand out, working on some of the older fire stations and some of the other police stations and such, to get everyone new, more energy efficient, and fully functioning HVAC systems. The next item, asset management identification, 10 million. The city has a contract with OpenGov to provide us our asset management system. It's in effect to an extent, but the reality is with the asset management system, we can set up layers for each thing. So a roofing layer, a plumbing layer, an electrical layer that would go all the way down to inputting every last outlet in a room and every single light fixture, a lighting layer for every lighting fixture. This is money to, in essence, work with consultants to go through our facilities, fully identify all of the assets, tag, link, denote the age and such, so that we could get a complete data set to import into the system along with its XYZ axis in order to put it spatially exactly where it goes in the system, so that when you go to report an outage, you can click your outlet. You'd then be able to say, look at that outlet. When you click on it, it would link and tell you which breaker it's actually connected to, and how the power is flowing to the building, so that you can track exactly where it's supposed to go and how to resolve the issue. But pulling in all of that data, I mean, there's 4,000 plus light fixtures in this facility alone, so trying to pull in, gather it all, geospace it, and input into the system requires more than the 11 maintenance workers that I have in the city.
Would that be maintained internally going forward?
So yes, so this would be so once we get the data and upload the different layers into the system, and the city has already done this for DPW when we hired Cyclomedia to run the streets and digitally collect 24 different asset categories.
Mm-hmm.
So we identified where every street sign is, we identified all the stoplights and signals, and it created tags and put them everywhere. There's a couple of different processes that we can do. You know, that was done a lot through AI and a camera system. There is an AI camera system that we have started with to be able to do the initial capture. The data processing is where it's going to get a little more expensive. Additionally, you know, there's got to be some follow-up, and there's some aspects that, you know, the AI is not set up to capture and figure out. So it's going to require a little hands-on work, and it's going to take time. You know, it was always known it would take time to build the system out, but the farther we build it out, you know, once it's built, it's built. You know, then it's when you do work on every asset, it tracks, logs it, you can figure out what's been done, how often it's been done, what you spent. It really sets us up to be able to take advantage of the future. The next item is cemetery improvements. It's $7.5 million. This is money that we are looking at both to stabilize some of the existing cemetery properties that the city owns, as well as adding a replacement for Holt. Holt Cemetery is one of our oldest and was actually, the first calls for it to be closed were in the 1800s. Due to overcrowding, it has only gotten worse. The plumbing, it was not set up to drain. It floods on the regular. Over time, they were really only placing people in there, not tracking, so identifying grave sites and everything is an issue. And due to the number of interments that have occurred at the site, the water table is way too high. You cannot really dig down deep enough without having to pump before you actually inter someone. It needs to be closed, it needs some work done to it, and a new cemetery needs to be open to handle the public need. And this would be the funding needed to actually get that new space properly done with an A&E, as well as designed and built.
Do you have, property in mind?
We do. We have a couple of locations that we are putting together some things for the mayor to review.
And are they city owned?
Both. The next one, citywide elevator renovations, $5 million. We have a number, in our buildings, we have a number of elevators that are well past 60 plus years old that really need a modernization. In a lot of cases, that's what we're looking at on this. We're not looking to do a full replacement, which could cost $1.2+ million a piece. These would be more along the lines of taking out the mechanicals, but keeping the heart and shaft. And by doing that, you can end up doing a replacement in the $250,000 to $300,000 range. This is also for money that we use to address major problems with elevator systems. Most of the time, as a result of some form of water infiltration in a pit, which is, below grade of the building. When water gets into it for whatever reason, rain, pipe burst, anything else, it does a lot of damage and requires an expensive repair.
Question on that one too, what's the scope of work difference with the citywide life safety upgrades versus the flat line being just for elevator?
So the flat line, the original line for the elevators, most of this was last year. This is sort of one of the rollovers from last year. It is originally addressed to the VA facility, but while we definitely have the need for all of this at the VA facility, I felt it was better to move it citywide where it could address other facilities and not be so boxed in on it. And knowing the general situation with how our fire panels are becoming quickly outdated, I knew that a lot of the life safety money would be directed in that way. So holding on to this elevator one was important, and spreading it out so that it could address places like criminal court that has a 100-year-old elevator in it, several 100-year-old elevators in it. All right, so then the next one, the Justice Complex repairs and upgrades, $17 million. This would be NOPD headquarters, criminal court, and the DA's office. And OPP? Stop credit. This is basically looking at the whole complex around Broad Street and trying to, in essence, do the A&E work to figure out what we would need to restore NOPD headquarters back into functioning form, and at the same time tackling the associated facilities around that area. The next item, backflow preventer maintenance. Really shouldn't say maintenance, it should really be, but it is. The city has several thousand backflow preventers. They're attached to most of our buildings, in some neutral grounds and elsewhere. Every 2 years, they're required to be tested and recertified. In the most recent batch that we went out to go test and recertify, there was an 85% failure rate, which requires replacement and backflow preventers are not cheap. So this would be, as we're working to technically identify them all with SWEPNO and categorize all of the city's different water accounts under a single water account, so that we can easier track it, we're finding more backflows that need to be tested and finding out that in a lot of cases they need to be repaired. And this would be funds to help cover the cost for those that would be bond eligible for repair or replacement, really. And the final item on the list, 3035 Earhart Warehouse renovations. This is the public safety warehouse. We acquired it a year ago or 2 years ago? 2 years ago, with bond funds. It is now actually occupied by NOFD, EMS, and NOCEM. And as they've begun to use it and for their different needs, they've come across some different improvements that need to be made. There's also part of this request would help address some of the infrastructure related to fire, moving out of one of their operational facilities and moving those resources into this warehouse. So these are things to sort of, everything looks great till you move in. Now you're in there, it just needs a little bit of work to be able to get everything fully operational for the long haul.
I'd like to add,
Sure.
NOFD does have the fence work, and gate work, segmented from this in their requests, because it's one of their top requests. So these are, together, but they're not overlapping, just to be clear.
So this is all like interior work, or is there some
So-
exterior work?
There's this, canopy for some of the EMS, vehicles.
The majority is interior. 90% of the work is interior work.
Vehicle hardware, electrical evaluation, new AC units, PPE infrastructure, and, the switchboard, so electrical upgrades.
Yeah, it basically, they need more power, and they need a couple of things tuned up, and this is also the setup to be able to do the laundry and.
Oh, yes, the PPE is included.
Yeah, so the-
For five?
For
Right.
fire?
For fire, yeah, so they're looking at moving their PPE laundry into this facility and out of the Magazine Street location. Which if they do that, it frees up the city to be able to market that Magazine location. Or possibly move the Fire Museum to that location to put it in close proximity to the D-Day Museum, since I can see the same people wanting to go to both, and then marketing the Washington Avenue location.
And for that PPE, you need fully NEP upgrades,
Yeah.
every sector.
And then it's a recurring, so you have like an investment in 2027 and then sort of this like recurring, is that because you think you're gonna have future spends? like
I think
yearly
it's,
upgrades,
I
or-
think we wanna turn around and do them, anytime that you start doing a lot of scale of work like this,
Mhm.
there are change orders and different problems that will rear their head.
Okay,
And so we're looking at that, and then there could be more that could be done in the future. It's really going to be a team decision on which portions of the project move forward, but there's an expansion of the office spaces. There's upgrades to those office spaces that could be done on the interior, but it's all about how do we have a pot of money to make the place that we need whenever there's an emergency fully functional. There's ways where we could over time rack the boats up to get them higher and to take advantage of the high ceilings versus keeping them accessing floor space, which would then allow for the delivery of goods and supplies that we get after a hurricane from partners and volunteers to be able to flow in easier. There's more racking systems that could be purchased and installed to allow that warehouse to fully functional, or smarter racking that could compress compress and allow the space to have better usage.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of questions. I think the first question I have is about the Justice Complex repairs and upgrades. You have the BA's building listed, and from my memory, I feel like they just completed or near completion of a full renovation.
It was a limited renovation. Yeah, we did, some office expansion, there was minimal, we did a roof, there was,
Lobby work.
lobby work, yeah, so it was very, it was a larger project at one point, and then it got scaled back because of reallocation of funds. So it is a kind of a very small spot renovation.
And the items that were deferred are, are now requested here. It's a HVAC, their system is a mess.
Pretty long chillers.
I don't know.
And that part's done in July.
My next question is about HVAC, unless you had something.
Go ahead.
Richard. You know, you have a citywide HVAC item on the list. You know, most departments that we speak to in these meetings, they want some kind of HVAC, replacement, repair, something like that. Things that I know that you're aware of, but would it be helpful for you if we kind of flag those for you, just to make sure that there's no kind of like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. It would be good to flag them and send them, anybody who's asking for a replacement. One of the benefits that we have now is that Train is available on state contracts, so we can easily order new units. That's what I was saying, we currently have 6 locations, we have 1 or 2 chillers coming to each of those locations. It should be arriving in the very end of June, beginning of July, and the packages for the installation are currently awaiting CEO signature to go out to bid. So we're looking at installing this first round, and this money would be used to identify the second round, as well as replacing some of the smaller, sort of, I guess you'd say, commercial residential systems. Not the big chiller packages, but just the regular units that we would have at our smaller 2,000 to 4,000 square foot facilities.
Last question's about the VA. Last administration, they did a study, like a programmatic study and plan for that building. Is there any kind of, is that something that you're looking at or thinking about? I feel like what was presented in that package was a few different scenarios based on like the market and the area and the city.
It was a few different scenarios that were presented. Having sat through the review of that, I identified even in that review with them that there was some serious and dramatic problems with their report. Considering that they felt that for under $12 million, we could demo 4 or 5 of the major multi-story buildings there. Yeah. So obviously they did not really have an idea of what pricing on demolition was, which I saw as sort of the first issue and one of the most glaring ones, because that was how they were basing all of their scenarios. Because virtually in their mind, everything was, well, just tear this down, tear this down, tear this down, and then we could do something new. So I don't know where they were trying to go. I'm sure there's some helpful thoughts inside of that study if you could get past that, but I had a hard time. And obviously the last administration did not seem to follow through with that program. It's early in this administration to determine what the future is going to be there. but when a determination is made, we're obviously gonna need funds one way or the other, whether we're prepping something for a transfer or, you know, or looking to actually renovate, repair, and make functional.
As well as the building's occupied now, and you need to fix it for the
We need,
occupants that
we
are
need to,
in there now.
yeah, we need to make sure that the areas that are in use are functional.
I was curious, so you have like a series of these like citywide building repairs, life safety, efficiency, HVAC, elevator. And are those numbers, like the total numbers for all the facilities to be like up to the standard that you believe they should be? Or is this like emergency patch funding, so to speak?
This is, I would say that it's closer to emergency patch funding in some senses. Obviously, when you look at citywide HVAC improvements, if you replace a chiller system, you know, you've knocked out a major portion. You know, and in those chiller packages, we're doing the VAVs and everything else. So you're basically getting a whole new system, so you're bringing it up to where it should be. If you're talking about a roof repair, obviously, once they do it, assuming it's done properly, it should be up to spec. But there are gonna be other aspects where you might get a roof and you might get an HVAC system, but I may not necessarily have funds to, you know, replace all the flooring, do all the walls,
Yeah.
change out all the windows, cause that can get, you know, extremely expensive, even if, you know, and that's where you sort of look at, if we patch in some money with efficiency upgrades on sort of smaller facilities, is there a way that we can sort of make a larger package? But requests far outweigh the dollars that are available.
Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, what I'm looking at here is having funds where when we see an opportunity to make something better, when we see an opportunity to support capital projects on something else, where funding may run short to accomplish a goal, or where there is an immediate need, and not knowing that general fund dollars to cover large ticket items is not the right path. It's having these funds available so that when we can act, or when we need to act, we can.
Yeah, my sense is just that there's so many buildings that are like in, I would say, like inadequate working conditions. It seems to me like, you know, it would be nice to know what the full scope of everything should be, and that's maybe where the asset management system comes into place. Like, then that would help predict like sort of how much it would really take to
Correct.
get things into correct working order.
So yes, when all of the asset layers are put into the asset management system, it does have ways, and there's basically factors where we can divine through like what is most important. Obviously, functioning HVAC in New Orleans is extremely important, as well as a functioning roof. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, humidity, and so when you plug in these different layers and they get a rating score, and that's part of what the identification team would be doing, is rating, you know, what the conditions and everything along a set of guidelines for the system. But once all this data is in the system, it's, in essence, it's self-predictive. It sort of tells us, and it kind of generates me my capital budget requests annually. It's actually the purpose of it. It turns around, digitize it, and it'll say, this has a 30-year lifespan, it's been going like this, here's how many repairs have been done on it, cost efficiency wise, we're making this request.
Yeah.
And so when we have all the data into that system, it becomes a lot easier. Right now, to go across and try to explain, it's easier to put citywide and have 11 items on here than hand you 178 different requests on a building by building basis.
Yeah.
And so and of which it then becomes really hard to address. this gets us the funds and it still doesn't resolve the immediate need issue.
Okay, I just was curious if you like had that number, it sounds like you're working on it
We're-
in this program.
We're trying to get there.
I was just saying, just as an example, like a elevator modernization, you can figure $75,000 to $100,000 per stop. So like the elevators we have here, that's 11 stops. So you're looking at $1.1 million to modernize one elevator.
Mhm.
So, you know, it can add up quick.
And how many facilities does property management oversee?
Currently around 178.
Yeah. that's
But we have some influence over all, what is it, 750 different facilities that we own, or buildings or structures, I should say, because, you know, the way we categorize it in the asset management system is we made even every little building, including like a pavilion inside of a park, a structure. So if it's got a roof, because that's a roof that we may have to address.
Okay.
And so there's around 700 of those. With a maintenance staff of, well, there's 14, but one's on maternity right now.
I did have one quick question.
Yes.
On the life safety upgrades, you talking about panel stuff, are your numbers taken into consideration? Because I know sometimes when we upgrade panels, now all of a sudden, we have devices that don't work because they're older and won't communicate, so is the idea.
And so the idea, like I was saying earlier, so if we upgrade, say to an ETS 4, we have 3s everywhere, and the 3s they've been discontinued at this point. There's still some stock, but that stock is going down each year. So the goal on this would be, we would look at a building where some of the sensors around are having some issues and causing faults. We would replace a 4 at the first location, take the good sensors that work, store them so that there's a bank to be able to fix at other locations. And so we basically do one building, harvest the good, trash the bad. At another location, if we still have funds, we do the next one, harvest the good, replace the bad. When we get to the point where we don't necessarily have the funds for an upgrade anymore, then we have all the harvested items to go in and make that 3 work until we can get back to.
So basically, you upgrade a building and then just kind of.
You take the working parts and move them to the other location so that you can keep that building functional, because still there are working systems as long as you can replace the parts, but with the parts becoming harder to get.
Okay.
You fix 1 or 2 with new, you make the other ones good until you have money come in, and then you do the next one, and you work that way until you run out of parts and are required and have to.
Right. Okay.
Wait, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So with the or citywide efficiency upgrades versus the building repairs upgrades, can you go through what the efficiency upgrades are? I know you said it was lighting.
So yeah, those are basically energy efficiency upgrades.
Okay.
So, one of the things that we're currently looking at and that I've been meeting with on is upgrading all of the lighting in this building, just to start off with, working with Energy Smart and some of their trade allies. We're looking at what would it take to change out every fixture in this building, and it's a little substantial, but this is, you know, one of our largest, so it'd be a little more than the $2027 amount, but not that much when we factor in the credits that we get from Energy Smart. But then expanding this around to all of the buildings that, well, the capital project basically haven't built new. We're really looking at trying this year to take advantage, because it may be the last year of Energy Smart's credits on lighting upgrades. So that's one of the things that I'm looking around at all of the buildings we have, and also working with Nord and the libraries about identifying a path where we could do all of these upgrades and get them finished this year. But then moving forward, it's other things like, you know, taking single pane windows, replacing them with double or triple pane to try to, you know, better hold in. better insulation so that HVAC systems work more efficiently. A lot of this is how do we, it's green infrastructure, green infrastructure for the building. How do we do it better?
Yeah, you're saying this program's about to end, is there a
Yeah, because there's other factors we could go to. There's things that we could put onto the HVAC systems to allow them to control, basically BAS
I'm
systems.
just saying, is there any, would it be better to front load those costs?
It might be, but
Hopefully
I'm fine leaving it where it is. I mean, it would be better to almost front load all of it, but that, you know, when you, the second you say that is the second that it ends. So I'd rather have a little bit of money every year so that we can do things to continually bring down our costs. And the other benefit of having it spread out over the years is part of it may hit me on the efficiency upgrades. Some of it could come from building repairs or upgrades to support it, but at least if I have a little bit of money for efficiency every year, it makes sure we think about it, and the technology always gets better. So whatever I don't get done this year, when I go to do it next year, it'll probably be slightly more efficient than it was this year.
Okay, I was just trying to understand why it was separated out from just the general building repairs, when if we're replacing windows with that fund, we should do it with the efficiency, like, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is really money to look at. These are, you know, whether this is something like adding, you know, there is the possibility of adding solar to certain smaller facilities. That's not something that I would necessarily put into a building, be thinking of tapping building repairs and upgrades for. I'm really looking at roof damage, I'm looking at plumbing damage or plumbing replacement, renovating, like to tear out a wall to make a larger conference room, and putting the tech and stuff inside of it to, you know, so that we could have a better conference room. That's something that I'd look at building repairs, whereas, okay, hey, we have this old police station or an older fire station that still has the original windows that were put in 60 years ago that are single pane wavy glass, which, I mean, the historic preservationists will love, but we do know they do not insulate for anything. And so what would it take to put in new windows that could basically handle a place that operates 24 hours a day, like the fire station does? Or does it make more sense to do something like the interior storm panels that snap in on the inside that create a fake double pane that would both reduce sound so that when firefighters are sleeping during the day waiting for a call or whatever, you get what I'm saying. It makes us specifically look at ways that we can make our buildings better versus the other one, which is more, do we have cash to fix it?
One last comment from me, again, about the Justice Complex repairs. I think every year, you know, when we talk to our public safety agencies, we ask them about the law enforcement district's bonding capacity, and if they are intending to utilize some of that bonding capacity to, you know, conduct some of these necessary repairs on the facilities. A lot of times they are like, I don't know about that. We have a new sheriff who, of course, is the chair of the LED, and just hoping if that, you know, if they can all come together, then maybe, you know, that would take some of the burden off of your department and your budget to be able to make those repairs.
I mean, I'm fine to have a meeting with you if you wanna go over and talk more about it with me, and we can sort of look at and try to possibly steer with the new public safety deputy mayor. I'm sure he's willing to look into a lot of this. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and I think we'll move on to economic development. Haley?
Thank you.
You can leave the door open.
The north one. So, I think I can go through them, can you put them up there?
Yes,
So I can just
sorry
make sure I have
about that.
the right list. Oh, I didn't know they were up over there.
Yeah. Just posted them. So you could just introduce yourselves again.
Sure.
Jenny Maines with, Deputy Mayor for Economic Development.
I'm Courtney Stuckwich-Wong, Office of Economic Development. I'm also curious, do you know, I know that, Community Development submitted some, are those in a different presentation?
They are.
And is Jenny included in that too?
I am not sure about the contact. Jeff said he was gonna come over
Okay,
to do the community development.
okay, cool. I just wanna make sure that.
Yeah.
Um,
The,
Jenny's voted on all those.
okay, well, he'll be here in a little bit.
Oh, cool. That's today too?
Yeah, it's, y'all are coupled.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Well, speaking of Jeff, he submitted most of these last year,
I
and so
know, he
I'm
should be here
just,
now.
you know, I was actually out, last year during this, budgeting season, so I missed the fun stuff, but, you know, Jenny, Jeff, and I have worked very closely on these this year, so, I'll just go through one by one. So you see our kind of top dollar and top priority request right now is Charity Hospital redevelopment. Some of this, I think, has already been talked about and contemplated, in the bond issuances that will be coming up. We know that the administration, and Jenny and I specifically, were in at least one conversation, I don't know if there are others happening, about this project, but Tulane is now leading this redevelopment as the master developer. And, you know, based on the article that came out last week, I think they're ready to make some announcements soon. I don't know how close to a financial closing they are, but there is a gap. There is going to be a significant gap, and they're hoping the city can fill that with bond dollars. And so this is really more like a placeholder, but this project, you know, if it doesn't happen right now, will it take another 20 years? I don't know, but that's why this is our number one priority. So yeah, that's that one.
Okay.
Should I just keep going through, or are we doing questions after each one?
I think you can just run through.
Okay, great. The next one is NASA Michoud and the National Finance Center. This is, another thing that's like very topical in economic development right now. We are, currently about 3/4 of the way through a strategic planning effort, for the area in New Orleans East, that's east of the Industrial Canal and below Chef, that covers kind of everything from like the former Fogerty Brewery to NASA Michoud and Folgers and Bow Brothers and a bunch of other manufacturing, that's happening, there. And in addition to that, we know that NASA Michoud, itself has put out an RFP for what they're calling Discovery Park, which is the former, where the National Finance Center used to sit. National Finance Center, if you guys don't recall, because it was a while ago now, was, damaged during a tornado in 2017, I believe. They ended up tearing that building down. So they're trying to reimagine what could possibly go there. But there's a lot of reasons, to, invest, in this campus and in this area. So we kind of changed it to, and on my list, it's, New Orleans East Innovation District and NASA Michoud instead of NASA Michoud and National Finance Center, so it's just like a small change, but, since the National Finance Center is kind of gone, we focused on supporting things that could happen in this whole district. So I mentioned manufacturing, we have, some companies that do like defense work for the military in this area. And obviously we have NASA, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin. There's been, a lot of speculation about potentially in some other parishes having, some private activity, we think that, this area could attract some of that as well. So again, this is kind of a placeholder for some things that might come out of our current, some investments that could come out of our current planning, work. And mostly it would probably be related to things like infrastructure improvements, cleanup, lighting, branding for that area. But, when we're talking about a New Orleans East Innovation District, what we're talking about is connecting industry to workforce and higher education, but also making it a hub for kind of 21st century industry. And right now it's a dump. And if we want it to be an innovation district that's attracting innovative companies, attracting skilled workforce, then we need to invest in it.
Well, Courtney, sorry, speaking of dumps, there is a dump kind of like right in the middle of this
The
space,
city on
right?
dump, yeah.
Has there been any discussion about what that could be potentially? I mean, there are
Yeah.
examples around the country that,
Mhm.
spectacular examples of old landfills turning into like parks and things
Mhm.
like that.
That's a great question. We are, that is part of our planning, exercise that we're doing right now, but to look at, what, how we could utilize existing city assets, including it's called like the Michoud, landfill right now, or the Gentilly landfill or something. But, I don't think it's ready to be a park right now, but we are talking about things like the circular economy, whether it could be a, materials recycling facility or some sort of, value-added manufacturing that could recycle, things that are a nuisance right now, like tires and, and other items. So that's part of the planning. It is, as far as I'm aware though, it is still in use as a landfill, that occasionally, mostly materials and construction materials are brought there, but, yeah, Matt Torrey would know more about that. Moving on, Municipal Auditorium, Armstrong Park, Amelia Jackson Theater. The mayor has just, ensured that we have funding to, finally start a strategic master plan for this, area. So, we are working with Ganoff to kick that off, in this next quarter. The RFP will be going out. So, we expect it to take about a year for the strategic plan to be complete. But we are hoping to front load some things, and so, I guess what the overall vision for the site is that it will be a hub for cultural economy. And so, but there are some things that we hope will move a little bit faster than others. For example, there's a private, nonprofit called the Levitt Foundation. Jenny and the mayor are meeting with them this week, where they are, they're a private foundation based in California. They fund public music venues all over the country, and they want to, fundraise and, spend down their endowment, they've been working with folks in the New Orleans communities for like 10 or 15 years now, so they've been hoping to move forward on this. But essentially they wanna, fund, a music venue inside the park, and so the master plan will decide, where it's gonna be located and things like that, but, we do expect that we'll need, some of this funding sooner than later. Some of this is also, I think, inclusive of any, we know that the FEMA funding is still up in the air, right? Yeah, so some of it might need to be used for that.
For the auditorium?
Yeah, I know the roof project was gonna be finished, but like the rest of the outer envelope and interior stuff was not.
When they gave the extensions to the JIRR stuff, they did not extend any of our projects. So we have the exterior piece that has bid, and we have a signed contract waiting on FEMA FEMA to give us either a rejection or whatever we can respond to. The interior piece is, I think bids are due this week on cleanup and preservation, of, artifacts and fixtures and stuff. But, the roof is moving forward with the bond funding and stuff that we had allocated to that. But yeah, so that's kind of hanging out there right now. But the master plan piece, as Courtney mentioned, that, I believe that is in the bond sale that's coming up to do, all master planning and stuff for the park.
Is that gonna be RFP through the city or through Ganoff?
Ganoff's gonna do the RFP on behalf of the city,
Okay.
so we're working on a CPA with them to get them the funding. There will be city people on their selection committee.
Okay.
All right, Plaza Tower, this is another one that there is, currently, the owners are trying to work with the development team. They're in the due diligence phase, and they're a legit developer that's looking at, creating, kind of senior housing, mixed use with a little bit of ground floor retail. They will have a gap. It's unclear based on kind of what the state is doing right now. There will be affordable housing, funds available, and so we kind of just, assume that there won't be like that much, state available funding for this project, so we've included it here. Lake Forest Plaza Mall, is another site that, is a priority. This is a site that is currently privately owned, and the city is working with the law department to, on a strategy to get the city site control. And so, one, we might need some funds to gain site control. And two, once we have site control, there will need to be, some due diligence studies, and eventually some sort of, subsidy to support this project. So we could probably expect that to go up over time if our current efforts are successful. For the Claiborne Corridor Innovation District, this is space under the I-10 overpass. There is a community plan, a 19-block plan to activate this area. In 2024, the first phase was completed and it was funded by the EDA and city match that did 3.5 blocks. I and folks in our department have been working with a group called Ujamaa Economic Development Corporation to apply for additional EDA funding, and we're also leveraging some funding that the state got for a federal grant called Reconnecting Communities Initiative. And so the funding that's reflected here is what the city's match would be if we get federal funding. So right now we're contemplating the second phase would be a phase called Tambourine and Fan. It's 7 blocks from, I wanna say it's from Orleans to Esplanade. And we are currently estimating 20 million for that, 7 blocks to be completed. And so the city's match would be 4 million. Market Street Power Plant is a private development. They are still kind of figuring out what to do with that. But I think, this is kind of building on some investments that the city has made in the River District and in the Convention Center, that this would be complementary to that. We don't know exactly what the use will be for the Market Street power plant, so this is more of a placeholder.
And the building itself is structurally sound, it's clean, stabilized, it's just
I
completely.
wouldn't say it's clean, it's not like white box or anything, but,
terms of like, environmentally, like,
Oh,
since it
that's a
being
good
an old
question.
power plant, you know, so.
That is a good question. I will find out if we have an environmental assessment. Riverfront Parks, hopefully everybody's gotten a chance to go see the new park. It's great, you know, you will probably see that, one of the wharves is still there. But you can kind of, you know, cross through, along the river. And so the idea is that we would have additional funding to, you know, remove a significant portion of that wharf. I think it's the Governor-
Esplanade Wharf? I think the Governor Nichols Wharf is where
Yeah,
the park is
it's the
now.
Esplanade Wharf,
Yeah.
the thing that's still standing. So I think they would keep some of that similar to the Governor Nichols Wharf for like shade and things like that. But some of it would be removed and, they would put more park amenities and things like that. In addition to this, there's ongoing conversations that Jenny and Jeff, and the mayor have been part of about, currently the city, is managing Crescent Park and it's, we're managing it in an unfunded way right now. And so like, you see 5 million, kind of annually, going out through the 2031, just because we think that, that will be ongoing maintenance for like the entire riverfront area.
And you, mentioned the description, the Orange Street Wharf. Are there plans for that?
That isn't, we don't currently have any plans for that, just
Does the
hopes
city,
and dreams.
does the city, have possession of that at the moment, or is it still port owned, you know?
That's a good question, I do not know about that, I'll look into it.
Seems like there's some potential there with the
Mm-hmm.
old ferry bridge, you
Mhm.
know, that could provide access, other
Yeah.
things like that, of course, for the district.
Yeah, I will say too, you know, we meet monthly with the, developers of the Naval Support Activity and, you know, kind of past Crescent Park is
Yeah.
the end of the world, and that is owned by, the Corps, I believe, no. I can't remember, but anyway, we've been in contact with the folks who own that too.
I think you're right.
Okay, cool,
Or like the levy board or
yeah, I don't remember,
has control over it.
Has control.
I'm sure it's
Yeah.
probably all of the above.
but they're not park people, so. All right, so that's Riverfront Parks, Bio District improvements. The Bio District has a master plan, a strategic master plan that they are implementing, and so, this kind of contemplates supporting some of those implementations. Additionally, there is a Bio District TIF. The city is currently behind on payments, to the Bio District because of financial challenges, so, you know, potentially, I guess this could support that in the same way that, you know, bond funding might support the Housing Trust Fund for a while, but, yeah, essentially this is kind of supporting some of the placemaking work of the Bio District. Similarly, Liffey Greenway, they have, done some planning work. I think they need to do a little bit more planning work, but, they have, also created a TIF district, and are working on expanding some of their strategy around investments. We also think that there's some investments that can be made in the Liffey Greenway area that will generate more revenue, so we see this as a way to invest, and then, you know, the city would hopefully recoup like tax dollars, on the back end.
This, this project itself will be separate from the, extension of it to, City Park Ave.
That's right.
This is separate from the completion of the agreement?
Yes. This is things like, the old sign and signal shop, like currently it's being used for special events. But it's like a pretty crappy building, and if we poured a little bit more money into it, we could, do a lot more special events and get a lot more revenue coming in. Upper Howard, this is, funding for a potential study for the area. So, you know, it could include, everything from like kind of the UPT, Plaza Tower, maybe even lower St. Charles, which is kind of an area that's seen a lot of disinvestment since the pandemic, all the way to, you know, Superdome and Arena area. But the idea is, just kind of, yeah, some funding for a strategic master plan to think through.
I think DDD applied for something in this area.
They applied for a Delta Regional Authority grant, I think, and they did not get it.
Okay.
Is there any word about, the post office site there? I feel like a decade ago, USPS, there were talks about them possibly
About
getting
it.
out of it.
Oh, I have not heard that, but we can ask around.
NOBC would probably know what the timeline would be on that.
I mean, it's been a very long time.
Yeah.
Since I was even, talked about.
I've heard of that too.
I will say, we did work with NOBC to apply for, a grant for some of this Upper Howard study work. Hey Jeff, he probably knows more about it, and it hasn't been announced yet, but I think.
What did I walk into?
Upper Howard, money, you said, NOBC applied for a grant to study Upper Howard, and we think that we're gonna get the grant, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Hasn't been announced yet, but.
Right, it's a Build America Bureau, grant, it's called IFAC, and it's basically designed to, access programs like TIFIA and RIF, which are like transportation enhancement funds that are financing tools that can be used for things like affordable housing and commercial development as well, around transit. So we're hopeful that we can get that.
Yeah, so if we get that, this would maybe complement it.
Sure.
There's a new TOD grant that just,
yeah, we
became live
talked about
also.
last week.
That's great.
Maybe I'll forward it to Annie.
Yeah.
Add it to her list.
Yeah.
All right, last but not least is the former Higgins Industries site. This is a port-owned property. And that's really all I know about it. I don't know if they had specific, thoughts about it, but, this was from last year, so I think there was a potential, project, and, it's the lowest on the list because the project has not yet materialized.
So isn't there a Higgins Innovation District that exists?
It's a great question. We have changed the name to the New Orleans East Innovation District.
Oh, okay.
So, that's number 2 on our list, and, I mentioned that's the one that has like, that
Yeah.
needs the name tweak. But the idea, but it's the same geography and the same idea, we've just changed the name.
Gotcha.
Turns out Higgins did a lot in the city, in different sites.
Okay. Any questions on our end? You went through everything pretty thoroughly.
I had a question about the Claiborne corridor. The request, you said that would be the city's match for a federal grant or fund that we're applying for. Do you know if that process has already begun?
The process has not begun, so the idea is that we're gonna apply for an EDA grant, and we've been encouraged to apply for an EDA grant. There's a couple issues. One, we need a stronger budget or a more detailed budget, and so we're gonna be leveraging some state funds to do the A&E, and then once we have that, we will apply for the EDA funds. The only open opportunity that right now that EDA has is what's called a disaster supplemental, and we qualify for it because it's storms that happened in like 2024, so Francine, I think, was in that number. There have been a lot of really worthy projects that have applied from this area to that pot of funding, and none of them have been funded because this area just like wasn't really impacted that much that year compared to North Carolina and Florida. And so we have heard that, the EDA is gonna put out another grant, which is called their Economic, Adjustment Assistance Grant, and it's something that they typically have put out like every 2 years, but it's been a while since the last one. Like, I wanna say it was 4 to 6 years ago was the last time they had this regular pot of funding. So right now, we're just kind of getting ready in the hopes that they will put that out. Somebody at the RPC told me that they've heard could come out any day. So we're trying to stay ready. Good question. You're up.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Let me change
Tap out,
this.
tap in. There's only two, I think. Yeah, exactly.
It's 2, right?
Yes.
Okay. You could go ahead and just introduce yourself, Jeff.
Sure.
And get started.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jeff Schwartz. I am the Director of the Office of Housing, Community Development, and Special Projects with the Moreno Administration. We have 2 projects that we submitted in this year's capital projects budget that are near-term priorities, and they're reflected here. The first is a new low barrier shelter, which is obviously a priority project for the administration. It's also a very timely project in that it is one that I'm sure the Planning Commission and members of the public are very familiar with, and that it is currently located in the site where it was originally founded, which is in a portion of the former VA complex that, you know, Jerry and his team can write a dissertation on at this point. Suffice it to say, I think LBS, as we call it, Low Barrier Shelter, has been very successful in its original aims, but the facility and location are challenging, to say the least, both in terms of day-to-day operations, maintaining a state of good repair, not without the heroic efforts of capital projects and property management, it's a really challenging facility. And given the prospect for redevelopment around that site, Charity Hospital et al., et cetera, we are actively looking for a new nearby location for the low barrier shelter. And while one has not been definitively identified, we think that there are a couple of candidates that will ultimately be successful in downtown adjacent locations that are near service providers, centers of homeless populations, are accessible in terms of walking and other forms of transportation. And so we believe that we are on a critical path to identifying a new facility. And while we fully expect to be able to fund that using a variety of capital resources, not just looking at the city, we do want the planning for that work to begin now. And so what you'll see reflected here is some initial investments in 2027, and the bulk of those capital projects resources we anticipate needing to be available for 2028, with a small tail in 2029. So that's why you see the overall $24.3 million request being broken out over the next 3 years the way it is. The current priority sites are sites that are would require substantial pre-development of, site planning, re-subdivision, et cetera. And so that's the work that our office, in conjunction with capital projects and property management, soon to be, I think, City Planning Commission and others, will be deeply involved in that in the second half of this year and into 27. And so, yes, I think, our goal is to, again, be able to create a state-of-the-art facility that is in a state of good repair from jump, and that is in a location where there can be a long-term home for resources for unhoused individuals that really aligns with the homeless services operators, whether that's through our Office of Homeless Services and Strategy or the Continuum of Care under Unity, as well as other stakeholders. And so, you know, we really hope that this process plays out successfully so that we can vacate the current location and address a lot of the kind of intractable needs that exist with that current location.
Do you know the anticipated bed count?
I think, right, it's a great question, and I think part of the exercise that we need to do in the pre-development, you know, leading up to like actual site planning, et cetera, is to get a really good sense of both what currently exists and where we're going. LBS currently is 300 beds, and I think that the sense is we don't want to see a reduction in that going forward. I think the open question that I have with, you know, service providers is, do we want more beds than that at one site, or should we be thinking about this more as a constellation of centers that serve different populations and needs? For example, the city does have, in partnership with NORA, there's a city-owned site on Tulane Avenue, just above Broad, that the city entered into an agreement with NORA a little over a year ago on, that has some home ARPA dollars attached to it for a non-congregate shelter. And NORA actually just awarded that, it's public information now, to a joint, a JV proposal between HRI and Travelers Aid, who's the operator. They provide a lot of homeless services in the city. And that would be for a 70-bed non-congregate shelter, which is effectively like almost like an SRO. And so that's a good example of that. There's still a long way to go to get that project fully funded, even with the home ARP money attached to that award. But I think the question is, how do we calibrate the low barrier shelter to have the appropriate numbers of beds in the right location, given some of the other investments that the city's hoping to see come to fruition? So it's a great question about how many beds LBS will ultimately have, but it's absolutely one of the essential questions that we have to answer before we actually do, you know, real site planning and begin design work. Yep.
And these numbers are based on basically what you have right now.
Exactly.
So square footage wise, bed wise, facility wise,
Yeah, the square footage.
kitchens,
Yeah.
the whole deal, it's based on exactly what we have, just somewhere else. And I think
In
that,
my
I
eyes.
think bed count, it was a weird number, it's like 346, I think, is what's there right now.
Mhm.
So, between the two phases.
Yep. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, anything else you would add to that?
No, I mean, again, you know, the numbers that are here are basically looking at what we had before. Keep in mind, you know, when we built it before, we already had a structure, we were just infilling, we had to do demo and things like that. There were some things that we had to address because the building was, I won't say abandoned, but basically empty and had been sitting empty for some time. So there were things that we had to address that we didn't really anticipate. But, you know, these numbers have been adjusted, assuming, you know, ground up construction, any other things that we may have to address on a site. So this is, you know, it's a higher number, but it's all based off of what we've done, plus what we may anticipate seeing on a site. So, again, you know, as I've told Jeff and everyone else, you know, our team, when we put stuff together, we try to, you know, if it's a little higher, we try to make sure, because eventually it'll probably come back to us and have to deal with, and if the money's short, then
Put a contract
then
out.
it's our fault. you know?
Yeah, right. Aim a little high.
That's right.
I think it's conservative in the sense that the numbers and
Right.
assumptions are higher, and I think, you know, again, I think the hope is that, one, if we do this right, the city isn't funding this alone, right? That there should be substantial state and federal dollars available. And, you know, I think as we look at how this fits into the wider network of, you know, homeless services in the city and how we're getting beds to meet the needs that we have programmatically, then the number could shift. We might say, oh no, we only want, you know, 250 beds at this site, but we want another 100 in a similar non-congregate shelter facility somewhere else in the city, so.
Sure, yeah, this is not the end all be all number. We're not-
Exactly, right. And it'll evolve, the next year capital project budget request might look a little
remember,
different.
except for
Yes,
the-
exactly. Hold us to it.
So, the number here, the 24 million, that would be full bill, like.
If the city was
yeah.
doing it alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But it's perspective.
Yeah, we would hope that we can tear off, $5 to $10 million chunks from some of those other public partners.
And the 4 million, that's just for like site planning
Mhm.
and site identification.
Exactly, some environmental remediation work, there's,
Design.
The design.
design, obviously, yeah.
And I did wanna, mention to you, Jeff, Carrie, in our brownfields division in city planning, she has a capital request for about $2 million
Yes.
for remediation
Yep.
on Fortress Road, so.
Which is great, yep, which is a potential location, that's right. Yep, we're not ready to say today definitively that, right, but I think, yes, that's extremely helpful and a great collaboration with the CPC team. Yep.
And there wouldn't be any like land acquisition for this, like you guys are only looking at city-owned property currently?
I think ideally we would find locations, yes, where we wouldn't have an acquisition involved.
Okay, can I go to the next one?
Sure. So the next one is, file this under like the community development side. This is not a housing related project, but Team OED and OCD and Parks and Parkways and others have been actively working to help manage the riverfront on what I would consider sort of an interim basis. The city, as many folks are aware, the city took over the management of Crescent Park at mid-year last year from the French Market Corporation, and a number of departments, including the Office of Economic Development, Parks and Parkways, Sanitation, more recently the Office of Criminal Justice Coordination, have all been triaging might be too strong of a word, but we have been collectively managing Crescent Park while we figure out and identify what the strategy is for long-term riverfront governance. We have been able to successfully, obviously, open the Governor Nichols Esplanade Wharves Park, or I guess technically Governor Nichols Park, which is the new Goldring Waldenberg Park. And that was done in partnership with Audubon under a pre-existing agreement. And so our hope is that over the next year to 2 years, we will be able to transition Crescent Park to management, whether it's to Audubon or to another entity, maybe as yet created. We will need to do some capital improvements, both to address some of the deferred maintenance that has existed, as well as address some of the acute challenges associated with Crescent Park in particular. And so the budget request here is a breakdown between a new wharf substructure barrier is one of the major expenses here that we estimate between $250,000 and $300,000. That's the number that the Audubon team priced and implemented for on the Moonwalk upriver end of Governor Nichols Wharf. That prevents unhoused individuals and others from accessing the underside of the wharves, which is a really pernicious problem. It obviously is a place that's attractive at different times of the year to the homeless population and others, but it creates hazards for copper theft, creates public health and safety issues. There are fires that get lit under the wharves, which create substantial risk to the wharf structures themselves. And so we need to create another barrier at the Mandeville Wharf end that's in Crescent Park. And so this would represent enough funding to be able to accomplish that. This also includes about $100,000 of plumbing related work that is for both things as small as irrigation and landscaping, water supply, to ensuring that there are not issues with the fire suppression system that exists in Mandeville Wharf, as well as the bathrooms, the public restrooms that have not frequently been able to open in Mandeville Wharf, as well as some electrical and other work that is outstanding in the park, where there's been conduit that is very accessible to the public. It was not, the conduit in the park when it was originally built was not in a location that was inaccessible. It was highly accessible, which is great for servicing it, but also makes it very difficult to defend against folks who are looking to strip, copper out of everything from the lighting to the emergency system to, you know, the cameras that exist in the park, et cetera. So, this budget represents trying to address a lot of those, get the park into a really good state of good repair, and then use that as a kind of send off to whatever the longer term strategy will be for this space. From our office's perspective, we would love to see something like their national best practices that would love to work with capital projects and city planning commission on over the coming months. Things like the Memphis River Parks Partnership, which is a really fantastic example that isn't in a big coastal city that's, you know, just upriver of New Orleans, on the Mississippi, and which is a very different river to manage than some of the tamer rivers like the Potomac or the Charles or others, and where there are really amazing new capital investments in park spaces, public park spaces, just like what we've done here. Memphis just did the Tom Lee Park, which is a really amazing award-winning park, but they also have much more passive and pastoral spaces, like we have at Crescent Park and elsewhere. And so they have a really amazing entity that's dedicated to kind of riverfront management and development. Right now we have a very balkanized landscape in terms of riverfront governance and management, and so I think that's where we see a lot of these capital, you know, deferred maintenance and kind of unfunded mandates for different stretches of the riverfront. And so I think it's our hope that we can make these improvements in the short term and get the park into the hands of an entity, either existing or new, that would be able to really have unified riverfront governance for the first time in the city's history, which will be a great community and economic development project that Jenny, Courtney, and I have talked about at length now. It'd be amazing. Just imagine how awesome French Quarter Fest was in the new park space if there was, you know, much more active programming and better park management happening, more than what the city can currently muster, not for lack of trying. We think that there's so much community and economic development potential in that. So,
Are the elevators, or is the elevator working?
elevators are part of that. The elevators, the part, it's been an issue with the clutch in the door mechanism as well as the door itself, and this will be likely included in that. We have the elevator company is Kone, K-O-N-E. They're one of the three, you know, big elevator operators or servicers, and so they are able to do the work right now. We just need some funding attached to that. But yeah, the elevator has been out of commission. That's another great point. Yep.
Yeah, from an accessibility standpoint,
It's essential.
it's very important.
Yes, it is very exciting that the Governor Nichols Park now creates ACRAID access for ADA and other reasons, so that's wonderful, but we should still get the elevator back in good working order. So yeah.
Governor Nichols extension is gorgeous. It was a hit with French Quarter Festival. Standing over there, I'm like, how did we have this without this section
Exactly,
for so long?
yes. Or that we were in jeopardy of not having that project move forward during the pandemic after that was kind of the linchpin of the whole public belt transaction, if folks remember. So, yeah, we couldn't be more excited, as well. It's amazing and yeah, long overdue. I think they were storing plastic nurdles I didn't know what a nurdle was before getting involved with that project, and yeah, it's great to see an amazing new open space amenity in the city. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
All right,
right.
thanks y'all. Thanks for all
Thank
of your
you
work.
so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. When you guys wrap up the budgeting capital
The
project budgeting
hearings
process?
will wrap up next Wednesday, the
Okay.
27th.
Yeah, that's what- yeah.
And then it's a couple months for us to like organize everything, but to be honest, there isn't going to be a new bond. And so
Right.
really every project that's coming to us, unless it's going to be funded by self-generated funds, is going to receive a zero contribution. Just letting you know.
No,
We're
it's
going through
my
the public
expectation,
hearing
yeah.
process, so
Yeah,
I mean, that's what you have to do every
totally.
year.
Yeah, it's
but just
charter mandated.
to make it pretty clear.
Yeah, to set expectations, yeah. Yeah,
It's going to be zero.
that's what I
right?
gathered, yeah.
Unless the project was on the previous list and was.
Right, the resolution, yeah,
Which
or,
will be the case for some people's projects.
yes, or that the resolution list gets edited,
Yep.
right,
Right.
revised, which we know is not this process.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah,
But this does technically, this should feed into that process in the sense that if it's a new project this year, then it has to go through this process before it can be added to, ordinance.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Everything has to be heard before that could be amended.
Yeah,
before
that's a-
allocation to be amended.
Totally.
Yeah.
Is that how you all are marrying the like charter defined process for capital projects versus the council resolution that was attached to the bond ordinance? Like that's how,
Yeah, that's how it's always been, read, or
Yeah.
interpreted.
Yeah,
is
that makes sense.
Yeah, all capital projects have to be considered through this public
This
process prior to.
inclusion on a new bond. Yeah.
They have to go
That's
through
great.
city planning commission, and technically be like.
Considered, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't appear on a capital bond funded project list without that.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Can the bond sale list be edited now, since the way the sale went out, it was like advertised to the public with all the projects on there?
My read is that technically it could be
It has
edited.
been.
Yeah, it happened
Okay.
once, right? It has to be.
I
it's a
mean, I
coun-
think that it,
A
a
council
little bit
action.
has, but I feel
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
Well,
I feel like the way it was put out there was like, this is the list, this is what you're voting on.
Right.
So,
I think it was with, yes, I think you're right, that's how it was communicated. I think they left themselves some wiggle room with like, if the council
Yeah.
can amend via resolution the list, which they did in October, right? Or like,
I think at least twice.
at least twice, yeah.
Maybe one for the Ninth Ward Stadium, I believe.
Yep.
And then there was another one.
Yep.
All right.
Great, thank you all. Thanks, everyone, thanks for your work. Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
Oh, you did? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I just go to the representative, family, my mom's side of the family's from that. But I remember what it used to look like.
Yep.
And then all the stuff that they've done since then.
Well, such a good job. Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, we used to visit Rhode Island.
Yeah, my family, yeah, we lived by there. Yep.
You know, it has a, I don't know if you know, it has like a model of the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
Beginning all the
Oh,
way.
All the way, yeah. It's amazing. And isn't there a pedestrian connection up
There it
Yeah,
is, so like,
yeah.
well, you can take the little skyway over
Right.
there, you can walk.
Right, right.
And, yeah, so it's.